The next stage in Dr. Grattan's work was to discover if Larky had an equally tragic impact on the health of British men and women.
In my research, I'd been to archives all over Britain. Joseph William, labourer, buried September the 27th. Samuel Flinders, labourer, buried September the 10th. Thomas Butcher, farmer, buried September the 3rd. Labourers are collapsing in the fields and dying, and that's what we might expect to see in modern air pollution instance. If people are having to do heavy manual labour, it's simply physiologically very difficult for the body to cope with the poor air and the high temperatures and the physical work. And you can see in the parish records we've been looking at that labourers are there, people in the prime of their life, and they're dying in the summer.
But the names of individuals weren't enough. John was looking for a pattern of excessive deaths, a mortality crisis.
I was really determined to nail down the hard numbers. I was fortunate enough to uncover the Population History of England database, and remarkably I was able to order this data on a CD, and it only cost me £12, the best £12 I've ever spent in my life. So this CD arrived in the mail, and I popped it into my laptop computer thinking, well, I bet there's nothing here, and created a graph, and my jaw dropped and my hair stood on end, because there in front of me was quite clearly something very, very strange happening in the summer of 1783.
In his pursuit of further clues, John Grattan focused his search on the well-preserved death records of Bedfordshire.
Typically, in a parish like this one, Malden, the normal number of people who might be expected to have died in the summer would be about 4 or 5. And in the summer of 1783, there are 17 people die here. In Cranfield, 23 people die in the summer, and usually they'd see about 6. And in Ampthill, it's 11, and usually it's about 5. So you see, parish by parish, these numbers add up considerably.
The evidence John has uncovered is corroborated by an eyewitness, William Cowper, the well-known poet. He saw firsthand the consequences of Larky's lethal haze on the British population.
Such multitudes are indisposed by fevers in this country that farmers have difficulty gathering their harvest. The labourers, having been almost every day been carried out of the field, incapable of work, and many die.
In total, the death rate for the entire county of Bedfordshire doubled in the autumn of 1783.
Well, the figures would tempt us to think that Bedfordshire is exceptional. But we can go south from Lincolnshire, Grimsby on Hull, down into Leicestershire, into Norfolk, Suffolk, Essex, Middlesex, down into Surrey and Kent, and we find these episodes of mortality everywhere.
From these 5s and 10s, the numbers begin to escalate into the hundreds, then thousands, then tens of thousands. In total, John estimates that Larky's deadly fog killed 23,000 British people in the summer of 1783, the equivalent of 100,000 people today. Even more remarkably, these deaths occurred in August and September, a season of plenty and historically the time when mortality is at its lowest. Larky's toxic cloud lingered over Britain throughout July and August. But that summer, the deadly haze was not the only ordeal to be endured by the people of Europe. For at that time, the whole continent was being racked by the most incredible storms.
The newspapers, before 1783, you don't find weather reports. But suddenly for this year, the weather is so peculiar. The newspapers are full of weather reports. From September, late September, October, they diminish again. It really underlines how extraordinary this episode was.
There seems lately to have been an almost universal perturbation in nature. All Europe has been shaken by some uncommon convulsions.
The storms which started to occur during the summer of 1783 seem to have been really exceptionally severe. Torrential rain, flash floods, hailstones, huge hailstones that were big enough to kill livestock, lightning on a scale that people had not seen before.
On Tuesday last, there was a most tremendous storm of lightning, thunder, rain and hail. A team of 4 horses were upon the road during the thunderstorm. In a flash of lightning, 2 4-horses were killed in an instant.
There are a lot of reports that seem to link the haze with the thunderstorms. They felt that the hot haze had caused the atmosphere to build up and be overcharged, and then you got the lightning, and then you got the thunderstorms. There's certainly evidence of that in the newspapers.
By the autumn of 1783, the toxic cloud that had caused such tragic loss of life finally dissipated, and the population of Britain could breathe again. But the death and destruction caused by Larky was far from over. As autumn turned to winter, it started to get very, very cold.
Larky emitted a huge amount of sulfur dioxide into the troposphere, the lowest parts of the atmosphere, and some up at higher levels into the stratosphere. Once that material gets into the stratosphere, it undergoes chemical reactions to form tiny droplets of sulfuric acid, which then scatter the sunlight back towards space rather than allowing it to reach the surface, and therefore you would tend to see a cooling of the Earth's surface for the next few years.
The winter of 1783 wasn't only exceptionally cold, it was also exceptionally long. Naturally, the unrelenting winter was recorded in minute detail by Gilbert White.
February 13th. This evening the frost has lasted 28 days. April 4th, snow as deep as the horse's belly under the hedges in the north field. April 22nd, the spring is backward to an unusual degree.
The Larky winter was one of the most severe in 250 years. In Britain alone, the horrific conditions took the lives of 8,000 people more than the average winter. When spring arrived, terrible floods of meltwater struck